So the next speaker is Quinn Jung. She is an Expo colleague of mine. She's from Vancouver, moved to California to do her master's at Stanford, and did a brief stint at Amazon as well before joining Expo. She has a pretty diverse set of interests, from brewing beer to playing music to dumpster diving. I'm not sure if you're familiar with, for non-native English speakers, dumpster is like a large garbage bin. So it's like going around and trying to find like some discarded goods that are still valuable, such as potatoes or carrots or things like that. She also enjoys a diverse set of foods. She describes the taste of rat as a mix of pork and chicken, and python, the snake, as kind of like a really tough beef jerky. So now you know that. Quinn's worked on a lot of projects at Expo. She's responsible for release channels. She worked on the Expo account system. And most recently, she's been working on a custom build system, which is what she's going to talk about today. So let's just clap for her as she comes on stage.
Hey everyone, my name is Quinn, and today I'll be talking about a custom build system for your React Native projects. All right, so first of all, I'm going to be talking about developing with the Managed React Native workflow. And next, we're going to talk about what a workflow will look like when we add custom native code. Then, I'm going to be talking about distributing an app to your teammates in an efficient manner. And lastly, I'll talk about the benefits of a custom build system. But before that, imagine that this person here is you, and that you are a problem solver. One day, as you're walking along in the park, you notice something very interesting. People have a lot of trouble distinguishing between things that are hot dogs and things that are not hot dogs. It's a real user need, and you decide that what better way to solve this than to make an app that when you take a picture, it'll tell you if something is not a hot dog, or it'll tell you if something is a hot dog. For you, the steps to success are very simple. First, you're going to make a not hot dog app. Then you're going to secure funding. Something will happen. And then you'll become the tech unicorn you've always dreamed of. All right, so let's take a step back, and let's implement not hot dog in React Native. It's possible to write not hot dog completely in JavaScript. So let's take a look at how a development workflow would work with just not hot dog written completely in JavaScript. At Expo, we've developed an app that enables for quick development in React Native. It's called the Expo client, and it's available for download on the Android and iOS app stores. All right, so the way it works is that first, you're going to set up a server on your local machine that will serve a bundle with App.js. And for all intents and purposes, when I mention App.js in this talk, I'm talking about all the JavaScript that you've written for your app. All right, so once you set up the server on your local machine, you're going to give your mobile device knowledge of the localhost address that's serving App.js. All right, so once your phone knows about the localhost address, a request for it, and App.js will get served to your phone. So let's quickly look at how your phone learns about the localhost address. On the Android version of the Expo client, you'll scan in a QR code, and that contains the localhost address that you'll need. On the iOS version of things, there'll be a menu that you can choose from, and you can choose your projects in development. All right. So let's take a look at a typical React Native project. You'll have the JavaScript portion, and you'll have a bunch of native code. These will give you the API access to things on your phone, like the camera, file system, and the accelerometer. All right, so in the JavaScript portion of things, you can call something like camera.takePicture, and that will map across a structure called the React Native bridge, and it'll call a method implemented on the native layer. For example, it will call the Objective-C method takePicture. So let's take a look at what actually ends up on your phone when you download the Expo client from the App Store. First, you'll get the JavaScript portion of the app. That usually contains all the app logic and all the views. And in this case, you'll see the project loading menu. That's all implemented in JavaScript. Next, you're going to have some precompiled native modules. It's a standard set that we include with every single app distribution, and it'll contain stuff like camera, file system, and accelerometer. Right. And all these things put together is what gives you the Expo client experience. Now, let's say, for example, that you had a project in development, not Hot Dog. If you go ahead and click that button, we're going to take your not Hot Dog JavaScript in development, and we're going to put it onto your phone. So essentially, the project loading menu that you originally saw in the Expo client will get replaced by not Hot Dog views and not Hot Dog application logic. And this put together with the native modules give you the not Hot Dog app experience. So let's take a step back here and take a look at all the resources it took us to get us here. So right now, the company consists of just you. Because you're a one-man or woman show, you have no funding yet. And in order to get the App.js, you needed to know some JavaScript. Right. So now that you've made Not Hot Dog, it's time to pitch it to investors. In order to do that, people need to see the real user need that Not Hot Dog fills, and they need to download it for themselves. So we need to find a way to put it in the Google and Apple app stores. Right. So one way you can do this is by opening up your terminal and issuing a command to the Expo build servers. This command issues a command to our build servers saying, hey, let's build an iOS binary. Similarly, you can do the same thing for Android. This command here issues a request to the Expo build servers for an Android binary. When our servers are done building it, you can go to our website and you can download the APK or IPA. All right. So let's quickly go over what's happening under the hood for our Expo build servers. What we do is we take an Xcode or Android Studio project with a standard set of native modules. We then package this project with the JavaScript portion of your file. So in this case, it'll take not Hot Dog JavaScript, and it'll package it together. And we do this all on our servers. It's all built on the cloud. Right. So once you download the not Hot Dog stuff, you can then successfully upload it to the Google and Apple stores. And in order to do that, right now, the resources taken in a company is you're just a one-man show still. Not only did you need to know JavaScript to make not Hot Dog App.js, but you needed to know a bit of Bash in order to issue the request to the Expo build servers. All right. So now it's time to pitch not Hot Dog to investors now that you've got it in the app stores. So you give your little spiel, and a really reputable incubator gives you some seed funds. You're off to the races. Before, you were a problem solver. But now that you've got seed funding, you're now a founder. All right, so before, we've talked about how you would develop using a managed React Native workflow. Now we're going to talk about what this workflow will look like with custom native code. So quickly recall your simple steps to success. First, we wanted to make the not Hot Dog app, which we've done. Next, we want to secure funding, which we've done. Something will happen, and now we want to become a tech unicorn. All right. So also recall that not Hot Dog solves real user problems. But that's not really the issue here. You sit down and think to yourself that not Hot Dog is not making any money. And that's usually a prerequisite to become a unicorn. You need to make money somehow. And you need a way for people to give you money. So you think, what better way to do this than to have an in-app payment system? This way, people can throw their money at you through the Not Hot Dog app. All right. So let's quickly take a look at what will be required in order to implement in-app payments in Not Hot Dog. The biggest change you're going to have to make is a native configuration change. So for example, in iOS, you're going to have to add key values to info.plist, and in Android, you're going to have to configure stuff in Android manifest.xml. You're also going to add some native dependencies, but by far the biggest change is to put information in your native configuration files. All right, so you think to yourself that you could learn some native development to get this implemented, but really, why would you want to do that when you've got seed funding now? So you go on Craigslist and you find Alice and Bob. You tell Alice, hey, you're responsible for modifying the native configuration for Android. And you tell Bob that he's the one to modify the native configuration for iOS. So Alice and Bob go off into their own little world, and a short time later, they come back to you with their native changes. And now it's time for you to actually see if Not Hot Dog can receive people's money. All right. So recall that before, when you downloaded the Expo client from the App Store, all the modules were pre-compiled already. The native code for camera, file system, accelerometer, they were all pre-compiled modules. And also notice that it came bundled with a native configuration. This native configuration is immutable, and you can't really change it. So say when you download the Expo client, you'll have a chance to load in Not Hot Dog. Right. So Not Hot Dog will come from your development server, it'll get put on your phone, but something's different this time. This time we want to see if in-app payments work. And the way you'll be calling it is something like in-app payment.receiveMyMoney. Right. But this won't work this time because we need to have the proper native configuration, and you can't really get that from the Expo client you downloaded from the App Store. What we really want is to compile a binary containing your native configurations. We want the Not Hot Dog native configurations. All right. So let's go over what a bare workflow will look like. In order to test your in-app payment changes, first you need to compile a binary with the Android native modules. All right, so what this means is that you're going to have to set up an Android Studio project on your local machine. You have to build everything to work on your simulator or your Android device. All right, so often this can be a pain. It's like when you set up any new system, there's inevitably going to be errors. All right, the next thing you're going to have to do is compile a binary with the iOS native modules. All right, so similarly, you're going to have to set up an Xcode project on your local machine and build everything to work on a simulator or your local device. All right, and also this can be a pain. You can run into errors. So far we've made a Not Hot Dog app, we've put it in the app stores, and now we want to make in-app payments. All right, our company now consists of you, Alice, and Bob. All right, so you still had to know some JavaScript and Bash from before. All right, Alice needed to know Java or how to configure native files, and Bob needed to know Objective-C. But notice that everybody here had to know about the native build stack. They had to run Android Studio or Xcode on their machine to see if any of their changes work on that particular platform. All right. So imagine a scenario where you want to hire another JavaScript developer. Of course, this JavaScript developer will need to know JavaScript. But they also need to know about the native build stack. And notice that even though they never needed to touch any of the native code, whenever they make JavaScript changes, they need to verify whether it works or not by building their project locally with Android Studio or Xcode. And notice that this is O of N work, and this would be really nice if it was more efficient. All right. So in an ideal scenario, if you aren't developing natively, then you really shouldn't be interacting with the native build stack. All right. So before, we talked about what a workflow would look like with custom native code. And now we'll talk about how you would go about distributing an app efficiently to your teammates. All right, so recall that Alice was the one that was implementing in-app payments for Android. All right, it would be really nice if Alice was the one to make the precompiled Android binary. So it would be really nice if Alice was the one to give you a link to download the Android binary with custom native configuration. So what that would look like is that you'll download an APK onto your Android device. And with Android, there's no problem. Once you download the APK, you can install it on your device. And it would be really nice if she gave you something that looked like the Expo client. So everything looks here like what you would download usually from the App Store. But the difference is that Alice has bundled in the not hot dog native configuration. She's pre-compiled the set of binaries that usually come with the Expo client, but this time she's got native configuration that's specific to not hot dog. So when you download this APK, what you'll see is a menu popping up, and you are able to load not hot dog in. All right, so now you're going to be able to scan in your development versions of not hot dog. And because you want to test whether in-app payments work, you're going to be calling receive my money. And this time it's going to work because we've got the proper native configurations. All right, so let's look at Bob's case. Bob was the one that implemented in-app payments for iOS. And it would be really nice if Bob were the one to make the pre-compiled iOS binary. Right. But here, unlike Android, you cannot simply download a binary and have it install your phone. Right. So the reason for this is something called a provisioning profile. A provisioning profile is a file that's included in your app and it's stored on your device. So it authorizes your app to run on specific devices. And the real takeaway here is that every single app on your phone must have a valid provisioning profile. In iOS, if you try to download an app that doesn't have a provisioning profile or it has an invalid one, iOS will veto that install, and it just won't install on your iOS device. All right, so there's a couple different types of provisioning profiles. The first one that a lot of you might be familiar with is the development one. And this is typically used when you're running Xcode locally on a phone plugged into your computer. The second one is an App Store profile, and this is used in builds that are submitted to the App Store and distributed to everybody in production. And last of all, there's the ad hoc profile, and this is used to distribute your build to teammates internally. Right. So the ad hoc provisioning profile is what we're going to be focusing on for today. And here is a quick example of what it might look like. So in our example, we've authorized our app, not hot dog. And you might see that there's a bunch of these UDIDs arrays. So every single iOS device is uniquely identified by a device ID. So here it's known as a UDID. And our provisioning profile gives two specific iOS devices permission to download not hot dog. So ideally, what we want is to put our colleagues' UDIDs in this provisioning profile so they can download not hot dog. Right. So let's take a look at what a workflow might look like. So we'll open up our terminal, and we'll issue a command to the Expo build servers. We'll say, hey, I want to build an Expo client, and I want it to be for the iOS platform. But remember that there was this bit about the provisioning profile. So we had to find out what the UDIDs of your device were. So you'll get presented with a QR code, and you'll scan it into your iOS device. So you'll go through basically a UDID registration workflow. You go through this workflow, and this will allow us to find out what your iPhone UDID is. And once we know it, we can put it into your provisioning profile. So once we have your proper provisioning profile, we can send client build requests to our servers. And once we finish building it, you can open up this website on your phone, and you can tap the install button. And what that will do is that it'll install it on your phone. And once you have it on your phone, you'll be able to access your projects in development from your local servers. All right. So once you have the development client on your phone, let's see what it looks like. You're going to have your not hot dog native configuration, and you're going to be able to load in your development versions of your app onto your phone. All right, so now that we've talked about how you can distribute an app efficiently to your teammates, let's talk about the benefits of a custom build system. All right, so you might be thinking to yourself, well, this is all well and good, But how else will the system benefit me? All right, so first of all, let's talk about Windows and Linux users. Some employees that you hire will only be developing the JavaScript portion of Not Hot Dog. And notice that before, it was a requirement that they needed to have a MacBook or OS X machine, because in order to test on an iOS device, you needed to run Xcode, and that's only available on OS X. But now that we're building the development client on our servers, you can hire people with Windows or Linux machines, and they'll be able to test on iOS devices. All right. Another benefit is the URL scheme. So notice that when you originally downloaded the Expo client from the App Store, the URL scheme will be something like EXP. But when you distribute Not Hot Dog in production, your URL scheme will be different. For example, it'll be something like Not Hot Dog. And notice that for an ad hoc build, you'll be able to test your app with the Not Hot Dog URL scheme. So when you have something like OAuth redirects in your app, it'll redirect back to your app using the Not Hot Dog URL scheme, and it'll match closer to what you'll see in production. All right. And another benefit is things like in-app payments and Facebook integration. So these things all require custom native configurations to get working. All right. So let's quickly talk about the release schedule for building Expo clients. For the most recent upcoming release, SDK 33, we're going to be offering ad hoc Expo client builds for iOS. For future releases, we're going to be offering custom native configuration changes for things such as in-app payments. And for future releases, we're going to be offering the chance to build Expo clients with custom modules like unimodules. So let's quickly look at what this would entail. So before, we talked about having custom native configuration with your client. But instead of having configuration, why not just have custom code? So originally, we had a standard set of these native modules, camera, file system, accelerometer, but a lot of times people want other modules. So you could eventually put in background tasks or Bluetooth or what have you. And essentially, you'll be able to pick and choose custom library modules to include in your build. Right. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to James, Dominic, or I. You can DM us on Twitter, or you can find us during the coffee break. Thank you.